doing safe, and it's Wednesday midweek. I hope everything is all in place. We should start in another 1 minute. I have the presenters and the panelists ready to go. We should start in about 20 seconds now. And just for the logistics, if you have any questions, feel free to put your questions in the Q&A window of this, the WebEx session. We will run through a presentation and a demo. So there will be, a lot of places where we would want it to get interactive. We will also run a couple of polls. Now these polls will, help you relay your thoughts to us, but we will also make sure that we are addressing your questions online. And I'm just waiting for the slide deck to come up. All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining in. This one is coming up from a popular demand, and we've heard a lot of you ask for this session. So today, what we are going to look at is SaaS solutions, and if you look at the last 12 months or so, the adoption of any SaaS solution, it could be Office 365, it could be Salesforce or any other SaaS platform, the adoption has gone leaps and bounds. Now, the whole journey towards migrating from a on-prem solution into SaaS solutions is an exciting journey. And as part of that journey, we have seen, different models of implementation come through. So today, what we wanted to do was to talk you through how Veritas can help build a comprehensive strategy for your SaaS journey, and we can help you build that strategy upfront. And the intent of this session today is to talk through how simple it is to build a backup strategy for your SaaS solutions. So with that, before I jump into my session, I'm going to ask you to give me a quick poll. And the poll is on your screen now, where I wanted to see where you sit in your SaaS migration journey. Have we, the first option here is, of course, you're planning to migrate into a SaaS solution in the next 12 months, or it's something that is in works right now, or it's already done, or there are no plans to migrate. This is just something that helps us benchmark or baseline where we want to start our conversation today. Also, for a logistics check, we've started to record the session. As soon as we finish during today, we will send you the recording as well as the slide deck. So feel free to type in your question as well as your poll response. I'm going to give it another 10 seconds before we close the poll. And as we've done this in the past, the structure of this session is of course going to be, as I said, we will run the presentation for about 15 minutes or so, but then we would want to spend as much time on the demo and give you the opportunity to ask us questions. If we could, Ranga, if we could go to the next slide, please. Awesome. Yes. So, we run the 25-minute, session plus demo, and then we want to give you enough time for your question and answers. Now, for today's session, I have with me lead architects from the Veritas ANZ team, and the objective here is to give you, access to our subject matter experts. So today I have Ranganathan from Sydney. He is our specialist in SaaS workloads. We also have Patrick Fisher. Pat is our solutions engineer who is also a subject matter expert in data management and SaaS workloads. And I'll be your host taking through the session today. All right. So with that, I am now going to hand it over to Ranga for a quick, slide review, and we'll then head into the demo. Over to you, Ranga.
Thanks, Amit. Hope everyone can hear me. Good morning. Welcome to the simplicity of SaaS backup offering that through Veritas and how can we achieve that? What are the requirements or prerequisite? Um, where do we go from here? And obviously look at the demo. Um, the first up is one, there is a massive uptake. Everybody knows that there's 2/3 of the data in the cloud today, of all the data that exists in this world. And so there are various forms of this data that is being implemented. So with O365, organizations have realized that it's very easy to consume, and then easy to operate, easy for users to collaborate, and so on. So there's a massive uptake in many different SaaS applications, just not O365. O365 is being one of the easiest one to do so. So one another study that has been done is, so there is a massive uptake in Teams. So with the current COVID situation, a work from home functionality, there's a lot of chatter that's happening. So a lot of questions being asked, business related, non-business related, many different aspects of it, files are being shared. So how do we protect this business data? So one such reference that I saw is typically it's no more a work day as such, so there is no working week. Recent studies have also shown that the chats have spiked over the weekends as well. So even on a Saturday and a Sunday, there has been massive discussions happening because it's the way, it's the easiest thing to do, and you can access from a plethora of Apple devices. It could be mobile, it could be tablets, it could be laptops, desktops, and so on. So that's where there is a lot of workforce interaction happening, which means there is data getting generated, and you need to protect this data. I'll shortly tell you more about that. So quickly we'll go into a Paul. Tell us which of these primary SaaS applications you use. Quite simple question. So what does your organization use? Do you have any plans to move it in a short while from now? What do you think, or what's your plan?
Thank you, Ranga, for the poll. We will wait for 30 seconds or a little bit more for you to respond. Just as a, just as a update that these polls are something that gives us a baseline and benchmark of how Veritas can help. So thank you for your response. And again, just a reminder, if you have questions, everybody on this session is on mute. Please, if you have any questions, feel free to type in your questions in the Q&A session, Q&A section. We will make sure that we go and address these questions as we move along. And the intent here is to make it as interactive via these question and answers. So it could be related to the topic today. It may not fit in this topic, but feel free to type in the question anyway. We'll make sure we are able to answer that. All right, Ranga, the poll has come through. The results are interesting, but the majority are saying it's Office 365. There's a little bit of uptake on Salesforce and Google Suites and even Dynamics, but majority is Office 365. So bang on. I think our demo is going to be spot on in terms of the relevance.
I agree. Thank you.
Over to you.
All right. So with this, as I said, there is a lot of traction being gained in terms of how to protect this business data that is getting generated from all forms. Now, as a cloud offering, there are many different offerings. So there is this on-prem, which is to be very popular. Then there is infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. So this O365 falls under this SaaS functionality, which means what Microsoft tells you is, yes, we are responsible for ensuring that this environment is available for you with in X number of nines there. So we provide you 99 point number of nines there where it is available. However, you are responsible for your own data. So you need to ensure that your data is protected. You make sure that you are able to restore the data for unlikely during unlikely situations, so where somebody deletes the data or ransomware attacks or something really happens to the environment. So we don't know that, and we have seen historically that there have been disruptions. Even 2 weeks earlier, there was this whole of Oceania that was down with Microsoft O365. So I work with some customers and seeing how can we get users to access that data. So I'll show that during the demo, but this is what Microsoft says. Ensure that you are responsible for your data, you protect your data. All right. However, so that we can provide you the best availability of infrastructure. So why do I need protection? So what's the need for this particular protection? So one, human errors. So people can delete the data, accidental deletions, or O365 goes down, or for natural disasters or various reasons. Now, ransomware and malware. So this is something that is being talked about day in and day out. So there has been n number of attacks, so large number of attacks that have increased during this work from home situation. So or hackers think that it becomes much easier for them to attack and then create ransomware. So that's the discussion point in today's world across many different functionalities. Obviously, make sure that you are compliant. So whenever we talk about data protection, it doesn't matter if it's on-prem or if it is cloud, wherever the data resides, you got to ensure a certain style of compliance, 3-to-1 style of compliance. So can you achieve that? So you need to have a protection. So you can't leave that primary copy there. And obviously ensure that the data is recoverable for any unknown reasons. So with that, we'll go to one on the poll there. So do you have any SaaS backup functionality today in your environment in certain capacity? So do you have a SaaS backup capability?
Again, we'll wait for another 30 to 40 seconds before we move along. So the question is pertaining to any SaaS workload. It could be Office 365, it could be Salesforce or any other SaaS technology, and it just makes you compliant. It could be just making you compliant with the inbuilt functionality or something that you're willing to consider. Right, I think we have it. It's a good spread. I have a split of backing up yes or no, but I'm sure there are areas that are a concern, and there could be areas where you could do much better if the backup solution or functionality give you that flexibility. All right, I'll hand it back to you, Ranga, as we proceed.
All right. So with that being said, so let's go into what is SaaS backup and what can it do for you. Now, SaaS Backup or Veritas SaaS Backup is a hosted solution. So it's hosted in a cloud, which means there is no need for any on-prem hardware or software for you. Nothing. So all you need to do is go into a portal and then you can add your connectors where there are different types of connectors supported. And once you add it, the backups automatically run. Nothing for you to do. So when compared to a traditional methodology, so you have to assess, you have to install software, there are other things to take care of, and then you have to ensure the backup, scheduling, all those functionalities define different types of backup jobs, what to protect, and so on. So here it's fairly simple. Setting it up takes literally minutes, and I have done multiple implementations like this. All it takes is about 10 minutes. So once we log on, from the time we log on and then we connect the connector, 10 minutes we are there and the backup has started. So that's all it takes for you to do with Veritas SaaS Backup. Simple, intuitive, effective. Okay. So then what is supported out of it. So you can add many different types of connectors. So we have a comprehensive, when I say comprehensive, we connect every dot there in O365 and we go through across everything. So whether it is Exchange Online, OneDrive, SharePoint, groups and teams, so we cover everything. So a comprehensive set of backup for your O365 needs. Every data is protected. And these are all protected using APIs, which means they simultaneously go, they back up the data, and then the data is there for your consumption. So once you have the backup, what next? So there are obviously a backup is only good if you can have the ability to restore. So that's where what we do is we give you the ability to restore in many different ways. So you can have an option to download it, you have an option to share it, you can password protect it, you can restore it back into the location, restore it alternatively to another location, many different options, right? And how is it licensed? Now this is the good part. Now we license per user per month, simple. So per active user per month. So we don't charge for departed users. That's where we excel. So no charges for departed users. However, the data that is protected out of a departed user, you can always restore. Example, a user has quit the organization a month back. That user license is now available. A new user joins the organization. That license is fine. As simple as that. Simple, active per user per month license. Then what else can we support apart from this? Now we support a host of Salesforce custom objects, files, documents, Salesforce SaaS requirements. So that is supported. We support all the G Suite, the Google Drives, the email, the tasks, calendars. We support that. In Dynamics 365, we support multiple modules. So overall, a good combination of connectors that we have that we support. So popular, as we saw in the poll, so most of them use Office 365, and that's where you need a comprehensive backup set. Now, setup, I've already talked about it. Simple, intuitive, quick to set up. Automated backups. So it does 2 backups every day automatically, and it performs the backup there, restores, multiple restore options. Apart from that, the upgrades are automated. So we recently had a change last week. So it was upgraded seamlessly. Role-based access control. Now this is another good part here. Role-based access control helps you to control who has got access to the connectors. So there are multiple roles by default within the product, which means if I have a front-end support team who does the restore, they only need to restore. They need not have other options to look at. But what can they restore? That becomes a question. So I don't want to give access to financial data, for instance. O365 for a finance group could be a very sensitive thing for your organization. So create a separate connector for targeting just that finance group and give access to only certain users who are responsible to access that data. So that's where role-based access control really become functional. And then you can also use single sign-on functionality, multi-factor authentication, any of these requirements that can be achieved through this. And we provide unlimited storage, unlimited retain. So you can store it for as long as you want, and then any amount of storage. So a user could have 100 gigs, user could have 50 gigs, a user could have 10 gigs, it doesn't matter. Per user per month. All right, I'll pause here for a moment. Amit, do we have any questions in the chat window that we can address?
Yes, Ranga, there are a few questions on the chat window. I might just start with a few and let's see how we go with time. The first question I have, Ranga, is one key element in my assessment is ability to restore information with granularity rather than having to do a wholesale restore. So, Ranga, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, 100%. So granular restore is the key here. So we can restore one simple document, one mailbox, or a set of folders, a set of files. So you can go to any granularity here to restore. You can restore from the top level folder to any subfolder to any file. Definitely support.
Awesome. Thank you, Ranga. The next question I have is comment. just rolled over. All right. The next question is, and maybe I'll get Pat to help us with this. If I'm already using a third-party journal service, example Enterprise Vault, is there any business case for backing up Exchange Online somewhere else?
Thanks, Amit. Of course. So with general archiving, its main task is to capture all email communication for the ability for e-discovery requirements, and also provide that single item restore. However, why you need to back up Office 365 is what happens if an end user accidentally deleted not just their inbox, but maybe their contacts or some of the other items, calendar items, tasks, etc. Those aren't captured within a general archiving capability. And then again, if you rolled out Office 365, you also have OneDrive for Business, SharePoint Online, Groups and Teams. So therefore, having a backup solution protects you everything, not just email, in regards to using a general archiving solution.
Right, and thanks, Pat. And I generally, always distinguish an archive with a backup. So archive is put in for a search purpose. Backup is always put in for a recovery purpose. So, when we actually have two distinct intents, that's how the solutions really end to, cater to our solutions. All right. So the next question is, why do you need to back up for Office 365 when it is on the cloud? Okay, I think this is very much in the same lines as Pat just mentioned. Office 365 is, it's simple analogies. When we had everything running on-prem in Exchange, we still consider Exchange backups to be done on a second site. Now that off-site location is one of the primary intent why you want to keep a backup. It's important to have, your backup needs to be in a separate place than where your production is. That's primary reason, and of course there are other benefits of having backups over and above, because your compliance will also need you to have multiple copies and adhere to your backup and data protection strategy. So that's the intent why any SaaS solution needs a backup. And again, Microsoft or any other SaaS vendor does not really take the onus of the data. If somebody really ends up going and deleting the data from Office 365, you've lost it. And that's where backups always helps you get it back. All right, so I'm going to
And also from
yes.
additional users. So Microsoft needs that active user. So if the user is no more active, how do you restore the data in a native solution? Not possible. So that's where you need a solution like SaaS Backup, where departed users, old data that is still protected, you get unlimited retention and storage, which means you can go back in time for a specific snapshot and restore that particular data. If not back to that same user, you can restore it to other users. That's possible.
Got it. I have quite a few questions, Ranga. I might try to answer them on the chat window here while you proceed. And if there are some things where I think it's a good point to discussion, I'll just bring it back. Is that all right?
Fantastic. All good. All good. Lovely. So we'll
All right.
proceed further. So SaaS Backup complements to O365. So it's just that there is this fantastic solution called O365, and we effectively complement it, and we protect it in its entirety so that you have the ability to restore that data. So one of the key things, as Amit just put it across, you need to have a second copy. There needs to be a compliance in terms of backups. Anybody who's auditing, so we know that there is a 3-to-1 backup methodology, 3 copies of data, 2 locations, and 1 offsite copy. So this perfectly suits that compliance backup methodology. So definitely required, and we create a secondary copy in a separate infrastructure. So this is separate to O365 infrastructure. So we provide unlimited retention and ability to set retention policies. Now this is another key criteria. So with multiple deployments, what I've found that is customers are looking to say that I have this kind of a data for this group, Windows group, where I want to retain it for X number of years, But this kind of contractors, I don't want X number of years. I want to restrict it to a certain time frame. Definitely can. So I have the ability to create a connector, just target a specific group for a specific retention. So that's possible. And then build for backup and recovery, just not retention. So obviously, as I said, it's only good as long as you can restore it. And definitely that's the case. So you can restore just a part of it or in entirety. You can restore the data, and we provide advanced searches, point in time restores. I can go back to any previous snapshot and I can restore it. And the last part, departed users at no cost. So this is where we differ from the competition. We don't charge customers for departed users, so we can restore the data anytime. I'll show that in the demo. We come to the end of the slideshow. I wanted to be more interactive, so I'll show that as a part of a demo. So just before going to the demo, note that there is a free trial available, 30 days. It limits 25 users, and you can test it to your requirement, and it can be done to your geo. So what do I mean by that is we have 3 different data centers, one in the Americas, one in the EU, and the other one in Australia. So you can choose whichever location you want. So just for clarity, I've just put the phone number as Australia. But yeah, you can point it to the location that you want, and then you can test it out for your, how it actually does. So you can see it in action. Sets up in minutes, quick and easy to perform back. All right. So with that, I'll jump into the demo part of the. Meanwhile, any questions? I'm happy to answer. Or
There are a lot of questions. I might, let's finish the demo because I know that we've got a lot of content to present. I'm trying to respond as we go along on the chat, and there are, if I group them, there are questions around licensing and there are questions around customization. So let's come back to them in a little bit.
Fantastic. All right. So here is the SaaS Backup portal for me. So you can see that I've logged into AP or Asia Pacific portal location. Now that's the SaaS Backup, and you can see that we have created a lot of connectors. Certain connectors are no more valid. Certain connectors are still functional. They are protected. They've been protected. You can see their times, how and when they were connected. What are the different types of connectors? So I have G Suite. I have O365. Now, once you log on, obviously this will be a blank screen, but primarily what you want to do is you want to define users. So users are the key here. So role-based access control is the key. So that's where I define my users. So what's the role I want to create? So there are many different types of roles that SaaS Backup support. So you can see that there is starting from limited support all the way to the master administrator, and then there are other roles in between. So once we define these roles, then is the process of adding the connectors. So I can add the connectors as simple as that. Click on add and then select the connector I want. So if I want G Suite, I can define that. So with G Suite, you have to download this into the G Suite from SaaS Backup into the G Suite marketplace, provide the connector name and sign in with your G Suite account, and you're ready. So similarly for O365, all I need to do is I define the connector name. The moment I click next, it directs you to your Office 365 portal. So where it goes and it generates a token for your admin account. And once you provide those information, all you need to do is you'll be presented with that screen. Oh, well, what workloads that you want to protect? As simple as that. So you select the workloads. Now, as I said, we use APIs. So we use different APIs to protect. This is all predominantly controlled by Microsoft, nothing that we have developed it, but the way we interface it is through the APIs, and we protect those particular workloads. So I could select different workloads. Ideally, we recommend one for Exchange, one for OneDrive, and one for SharePoint groups and teams. As simple as that. So select those, and you have the choice of targeting either the users or groups. So once you target, so I see different groups there. Now, as I was giving you an example, if I have a finance department, which is very, very sensitive for an organization, so I could define a connector only for that particular finance organization, and I can only target it to that particular team. I can only click on that particular team. Right now, this has already selected certain groups, but this is what I'm trying to show as a use case, so that you can control for which group you're applying and what's the retention you want to apply. So it can be unlimited. If you uncheck that, it will be unlimited, or you can set a specific retention. And finally, who gets access to that? So that's where that users become very, very critical. So I can say, all right, this connector can only be accessed by certain specific people. So that way people don't tamper with data, right? So once we click on save, the backups will start running. You don't have to do anything. It starts synchronizing, and backups run automatically twice a day. So I can see that I can go back in time and I can look at the job monitor. I can view how many backups have done, how many restores have been done, what is the status. I can view more details about each of those, what files were protected from whom. Everything can be done, and you can also download it as a CSV. Now, if you want to aggregate it to a particular portal like Splunk or Tableau, and you want to apply this or view this, that's supported. On top of it, we also support our own API. So there is a big API library that you can download, and you can integrate it through APIs. If you want to customize the functionality in your own way, you can make use of those API functionality. So that's the initial connector part. So no different to Google Suite. So just that Google Suite data is different. Other than that, from a behavior perspective, the way it shows up, from your navigation perspective, nothing changes. Everything is similar. I click on add, select the workload, provide the credentials, you're ready to backup. As simple as that. Okay. So once you protect the data, then the next thing is, what can I do to restore? Now, this depends on the request type. Oh, can you restore one single email? So I can go to a specific user, start digging in, and then go to a specific user, and then I can start looking at the data. Now, it protects your Outlook, it protects your in-place archives. If you have any deleted items, by default, it doesn't show deleted files. But if you have got any deleted items, it can also display those deleted files. Now, once I select those information, now I have a choice to say, oh, what can I do? Or maybe I have a departed user. I want to download it as a PST rather than restoring, because this user is no more there, but HR or a security team is requesting for the data. I can download it as a PST and present it to that particular team. Or I can download it as a zip file, or I can share it as a link. Now, remember, while talking on the slides, I was showing a use case. So a couple of weeks back or 3 weeks back, Microsoft had a downtime in Asia Pacific on their O365. Now, this customer who was already performing the backup, they said, hey Rangak, how can I provision the files to a senior manager here who is requesting for his data? He wants to work on this particular data. So what I said was, all right, what you need to do is go to OneDrive, go to the OneDrive location, and then look for those files. You can either search for it, or you can look for the files within that particular user's data, right? And then depending upon where you want it, just share that particular one with a limited time frame. So I can say time limit this particular link to a certain time, and you can also add an additional layer of protection like a password link. Now, once I share this particular link with that user, the user was able to access the backup location. Now, obviously, this is from the latest backup. Now, if the customer is looking, hey, I don't want the latest backup, rather I want it from the last 30 days. I want the 30 days old backup. I can go to historical snapshots, go 28 days back and select, or 30 days back, whatever is the case. So I can go back in time and provision that as a link to that particular user. Now, this particular manager was able to log on remotely, and he was able to download the files, work on those documents that was done, and finally, when the service was up and running with O365, he synced it back to OneDrive. As simple as that. So this is a use case, because I was fortunate to look at it. It was a right time, right call. So the customer was able to resolve this particular issue. So SSO was not functioning, many different issues. Whatever is the case, so if you want to do that, and that's absolutely possible. So you can go back to historical snapshots, you can restore there, or you can share it as a link, or you can download it, or you can restore it back to the folder. Now, whenever I click on restore, I get additional options. So for example, if I go to SharePoint, now, if I say restore, I get multiple options. Do you want to restore it back to original location, or do you want to restore it to a particular another location? How do you want to restore it? Do you want to do in place, or do you want to do it as a new site? Multiple options are available. Now, depending upon the connector type, you would see different functionality. So finally, two more points, and then we can go back to the Q&A. SSO. Another key functionality that customers want to access. So I don't want users to log on directly into this portal. Rather, I would want them to go through my official portal. So everybody has got their own portal. For instance, I can go to enterprise applications within Azure, and you can see that there is Veritas SaaS Backup right there. So I can use this particular information. So I need the object ID, the token ID, and then the SAML certificate. So once I generate a certificate, I can get back, I can click on add, and then add the certificate information and provide the IDP URL. So there are specific URLs that you need to add. Once you add it, you're ready to go. So you are able to redirect users from your own portal. So that way you are making your auditing easier. So you're not seeing users logging on directly to the third-party portals, rather you're directing it through your portal, makes it more controllable. Or if you want to do multi-factor authentications, you can achieve that through here. So the other stuff, one last thing that I want to touch upon is, so let's take a use case where clear. So let's say I have a departed user who was a manager. This was a month back, and then a new manager has replaced the old manager, and there's a gap of 30 days. Now, this old manager had quite an important set of OneDrive files working on the business. Now, how can we ensure that they get these data seamlessly in? So based on the approvals, obviously, so what we can do is we can do something like import data. And I could say that, hey, import the data for this particular connector from this particular day, and then for what is the behavior, do you want to overwrite and so on. And then I just want the OneDrive data for this user who had quit the organization into the new user who has joined the organization. So I can start importing the data relevant to that particular user. Very, very compelling use case, especially when users quit and there is a gap between them and you want to share business related data. This is one way that you could do it. All right, I'll stop there. Other thing that I wanted to point out is the portal. So that's veritas.com. Once you go to the product portal, that's where you register for the trial. And that's the trial portal. You'll work with your account rep, or you can contact one of us and then we can help you. I'll stop there, Amit. So let's go for the Q&A.
Thank you, Ranga. There were a couple of questions around where is this hosted? Can you just give us a little more context on, given that this is a Veritas SaaS solution, can you just talk a little more on the hosting location for Australia?
Definitely. So, so as you can see, this is hosted in 3 different locations, one in the US, one in the Europe, and then there are Australian data centers. Australian data centers in Sydney, they are Equinix data centers with multiple points of presence. We hold 4 copies of data continuously. So there are multiple, they're all certified, SOC certified. So if you just go to Equinix certifications on Google, you will see that they're certified for many different things. So the same certifications apply to our data center.
Brilliant. All right. So let me now go in sequence to the questions. Again, we have a lot of questions coming in. If we are not able to fit in the time that we can address all of them, we will certainly make sure that we get back to you on with a response. Okay. The next question, Ranga and Pat, is what time of the day are the two backups carried out? Now, I'll probably group these questions around the time frames and time windows together. So the first one is what time? Is it customizable to more than two copies? And that's from customization comes from a view of an RPO.
All right, sure. I can address all of those. So as I said, in the demo, I was showing that once you set up the connector, that's the point where you have defined the connector, and that's where the backup synchronization starts. So it is customized for you. It's your environment. So the moment you set up that connector and the connector is all credentialized, all good, that's when it starts synchronizing. From that point onwards, it does two backups a day in a 12-hour window. So two backups a day. Having said that, not necessarily the first backup has to complete within that 12 hours because the very first backup, initial backup is large. So it might take some time. So there are certain thresholds also applied by Microsoft, and also in current times, Microsoft is also seeing a lot of uptake, which means they have reduced the ceiling limit, how their APIs interact. So based on those, it might take a while to perform the initial backup. And once the initial backup completes, now if it completes before the start time, so whatever was the start time, if it completes it, the next backup would start at that time. If it goes beyond the start time, then whenever is the next 12 hours from then onwards, it will oscillate in that 12-hour window. So that's how the SaaS backup initially functions. Now to the other question of, oh, can we customize it? Yes, possible, but it's not a mandate that everybody can go and change it. It's for a case by case basis, depending upon how you use it. So there might be questions coming from the product team or your account team to understand how you want it, what are your RPOs, what are you doing today, and how do you want to enhance it, how critical it is. Based on all these, we could really customize it to a requirement and enable multiple.
Thank you, Ranga. The next question is, what about journaling?
Journaling. So from what part? Is it a discovery
So
perspective?
I think we are looking at Exchange predominantly, and if Exchange we're backing up, does the solution cover journaling? Is how I would interpret this question, and I would just to keep it simple, and if there is a follow up, please give us a little more context on your question, Dave. But
Right.
the solution does not come with journaling in place. Journaling is completely a different metric and a measure. This solution aims for getting you backup and securing your backups.
Correct. Now, just to add a bit of color there. So, journaling is getting an immutable copy. So you just want to get a copy. The moment an email lands, doesn't matter what that email is, you want a copy of that. And that is used for a specific purpose, compliance, regulatory, classification. So there are many aspects to the journaling. What do you do with that? So that's where it takes a different stream, as Amit put it, whereas SaaS backup is purely looked at from a backup perspective. So mailboxes, all the tasks, calendars, everything. So two different streams, two different perspectives.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ranga. The next question is, what happens if staff have left, but we need to retain the data?
Always retained. As I said, we retain all the data since the time we have protected, but what gets charged is only the active users at that point. Active users.
Okay,
I
sounds
would
good.
not say at that point in time. Active users depends. Again, there are certain agreements. Again, we'll not go into the specifics there, but it's active users. But old data is also retained.
Sounds good. And Ranga, while we answer the questions, if you could just bring up the slide deck and put in our ANZ reach out to email. If there are any questions where you think we need to answer it in more detail, please send out an email to this email address, and we will make sure that we get back to you with the context. All right. The next question I have, Ranga, I think it's in the same lines as you answered, but the question is automatic backups up to twice a day. Um, yes, we have automatic backups up to twice a day, which again, as Ranga said, it can be customized on need basis. So that's going to take it further. Okay, the next question I have is our current solution allows our users to restore files themselves, reducing the impact on the IT team. Can they do that with this solution?
100% yes, but you would be complicating that solution because backups are not for users to go validate. Again, remember how is the sensitivity of that connector? Because the moment you say this is a user, then they can access the entire connector. And so it is only backups can only be or should only be accessed by a certain group of people. And also we give you the ability to create multiple connectors to put in whichever is more secure. You can restrict it to certain users, which is more generic. You can give it to more users. But per user, their own request or self-service is not the use case here.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ranga. Now the next question is, are licenses based on all active users in the tenant, or can you define a number of licenses to purchase?
So ideally, we would want to. This is how I have looked at it, and it has worked. So, what is historically, on an average, how many users are there in the organization in the last couple of years? So that could be a good metric for you to decide what should be the number of licenses that you back up. So you need not be accurate saying that, hey, I have 1,842 users today, so let's buy 1,842 licenses. Maybe not. So on an average, look at it. Now the situation is such that there could be downsizing in the organization and it could come back to normal. So look at on an average, what is the organization size, and based on that make that decision. And how's the organization progressing in terms of bringing in people and so on. So many factors. So look at that, get a number, and then that would be it. And if you go beyond it, so you can always add additional licenses.
Perfect. Thank you. And again, if you look at constructs like Teams and SharePoint, this is where the coverage of your organization comes in, and it's recommended that you consider the entire organization scope rather than a subset or a subgroup. Because Teams, and if your use case needs are backing up Teams or even backing up SharePoint, that's where everybody in the organization needs to be considered. So
That's
it's
absolutely
the scope that that defines the number of users. All right, so I had a couple of questions that were answered on chat. Key mention was around Dynamics 365. Can I restore an attachment or an entity record? And we have that answered, which says yes, we can. We can restore it as granular as a single record. So that's great. I'm going to keep moving. We have another 10 minutes and the questions are coming in nice and quick. All right. So the next question I have is, how does the licensing work for Office 365 and Google Suite and Salesforce? Is it per user per month for multiple cloud environments?
that is correct.
So
So
yes, go for it.
each and every connector is separate. So one for
Exactly.
go ahead.
So one connector is for Office 365. You need to procure that many users per month, and then we have a separate connector license for Salesforce as well as for Google Suite. So that's how that procurement would work. All right. The next question I have is, can we manage multiple clients in one portal? This, I think, comes from a service provider perspective.
All right. So interesting. At this time, we are looking at MSP portal, enabling it as an MSP portal. So at this time, this is not, you cannot service multiple clients. Having said that, because it's a portal-based functionality, um, depends on who owns the license. So you could log in independently to each of those portals and service them. That's still possible. What is not possible is in one single portal, if you add multiple connectors belonging to multiple clients, um, customized reports for each of those connectors is not there yet today, which is in the roadmap.
And the solution comes with a comprehensive REST APIs. So these REST APIs can actually be incorporated into a service provider portal, and that's when you could integrate that into your provisioning cycle or your provisioning workflows, and ensure that it ties in well with your operational. It could be ServiceNow, or it could be any ticketing or an element manager systems. All right, I will keep moving. The next question I have is there was a question around the RPO, but I think we've answered that. The next one is for any maintenance like SaaS backup updates. Is it seamless from users front ended and business continuity prevails?
Rephrase it, please.
So the question here is when the infrastructure, the backup infrastructure needs to be upgraded, um, will the users see any changes or disturbances, and will the business continue?
No, there won't be. So it will be seamless. The user wouldn't know what has changed when the upgrade happens. Software perspective, so nothing really changes.
Absolutely, and the whole solution is just upgraded and managed in the back end. The front end would not change, nor would your SLAs ideally be impacted. Okay, the next question I have is, can you share available reporting options for customers who use Veritas SaaS Backups, like monthly, weekly SLAs, protected items, daily job status with failed warnings, missed jobs, etc.?
Okay, so as I said, you would see the reports under the job monitor, but you can also export it into a CSV, which could then be aggregated into customized portals, centralized portals where you're reporting for multiple things. You could integrate that. One integration that we have today is in two of the other products. So in one of the backup functionality, so we have the reporting capability integrated, and we have our own analytics software. That's where all that, even there the integration is there. So there is a reporting functionality as a service, as a product, you can see it. There is that integration available, but no reporting as such. So you'll see that in the job monitor. If you have your own reporting tools, you can aggregate these CSV
Awesome.
files and then report it.
Great. All right. Thank you for that, Ranga. I have another question on how do you compare yourself with your competitors? I think if you could just reach out to us on this email address, and we give us a brief overview of what you're trying to solve for, we could then help you fit in some sort of a, metrics in terms of where our Veritas solution can help you address the challenge. So that's something that we would recommend. Just reach out to us on this email address. All right. The next question I have is, what authorization authentication type does Veritas use to access Office 365 API? Is it basic authorization or authentication, or is it modern auth? Does it support multi-factor authentication?
So we definitely support multi-factor authentication through SSL. So definitely possible. So our authentication, so we don't really store any credentials. So when initially adding the connector, whenever we provide the credentials, a token is generated from O365, and using the token, we try to authenticate, get things done.
Brilliant. All right. So the next question, I think Pat has answered it on the chat. The question was around granular restores in Teams as well, but Pat has answered that. I'll keep going. What is the security of the data? Who can access the data outside of your organization?
We can definitely, we have a published security white paper in this regard. So there are many FAQs that are answered here. So obviously we won't have access to your data straight away, but if there is a request from you to troubleshoot or backend access, based on your approval, the backend engineering team can go in and then they can access the backup information. So this is for specific use cases, specific troubleshooting methodology. Having said that, no, there is no default access to it.
Brilliant, thank you. And of course, there is encryption in place always at rest as well. So the security white paper gives you a lot of insights in there. All right, the next question, I'm looking at the time, it is 6 minutes. Is there any data limits size per SaaS user? Quickly to answer that in short, there is no limit to the size. Any user could have as much data as they hold in their Office 365 or their SaaS account. All right, so the next question is additional licenses can be pro rata added to your existing contract. That means that if during the year, if you need to procure more licenses, would that be pro rata, and can that be added into your existing licenses?
Probably it's a commercial discussion.
Yeah, I think it's the way we could structure the contract that should be something that we can definitely consider and address. The next question is Exchange in place archive. Just to be clear, does your solution fully back up the second archive mailbox for E3 users? Most SaaS solutions do not back up archive mailbox. Do you restore from the archive mailbox if a user needs recovery?
So in-place archives is definitely protected. So as you could see in my demo, so there was this mailbox as well as in-place archives. So both are protected. So if you need recovery from those, definitely support.
Great, thank you. All right, I am getting to the next question. Right, the next question is who is responsible for the network between Office 365 and Veritas SaaS Backup? Is it the customer?
No. So this is our own data center. So we have internet point exchange where we almost directly connect to 365 and we capture the data.
Correct. And there was also a question earlier which had indication to throttling. So we do have a published white paper or a tech note where we can configure throttling between Office 365 and Veritas, and Veritas, so that your first backup, that's where your major data is going to be moving from Office 365, is when it could optimize and help you get it quicker. And we will you send us some more information or questions around this, and we'll help you with the link to the throttling procedure. All right, so I think I have addressed all the questions that have come here in the Q&A section. Of course, we are almost at the top of the hour. There is one question on the chat which says, I am a managed service provider and have many customers that require SaaS backup. Do you have an MSP program? We do have an MSP program, and one of our team members will certainly reach out to you. So we will arrange that. And there were a few questions that I think Trudy that came in to your bucket, but I don't think we have time to address those questions. So thank you all for joining today, and thank you Ranga and Pat for being on the session and helping us with the questions as well as the demo. Again, a reminder to all participants, please send in your questions or your follow-up on ANZ or team at veritas.com. We would be happy to address any of your questions, as well as if you need to look at some details of the demo or the solution, happy to do that. All right. With that said, thank you so much for joining in. We have another 1 minute, and I'm now looking at the last set of questions, if at all there are any. Uh, but if we can, because we couldn't really fit in all the questions today, we wanted to make sure that we have this in front of you. Feel free to send out. And again, it may not really be pertaining to Office 365 or SaaS Backup. If you have any data management challenge or question, we would be more than happy to help you across the board. So that's that's something that you could have access to our architects as well. And if you also have any suggestions or feedback in terms of what you want to see next, we generally run this in a two-week cadence. So the next session, if you have any feedback or suggestions that you would want to see what comes next, feel free to write to us, and we'll definitely factor that in. All right. With that said, I am now going to close this session. As I said, we have recorded this session, as well as we'll share the slide deck with you as we finish our session today. All right. Thank you all for joining in, and until next time, stay safe, stay stay home for people in Victoria, and I will talk to you in 2 weeks. Thank you,
Thank
and
you.
have a lovely day off from here on.
Take care, guys. Bye.